exposure, ISO, shutter speed, strobe lighting, composition. What the heck are they all? Well, we'll find out now. Hello and welcome to another episode of English Podcast with Paul. I am your host, Paul. So, if you have an interest in photography or you just want to know what these words mean, then we're about to dive in and find out. So, buckle up, put on your headphones or crank up that dial. And if you're driving, please just focus on the road. Driving is very important. Right, okay. So, these photography words, these terms, this terminology. Okay, what are they? Well, first of all, they're all words from, like I said, photography, from a DSLR, a digital single lens reflex, or reflective, whichever you prefer. So, what is a DSLR? Many people already know a DSLR is a big, kind of professional looking camera. You can get DSLRs for real professionals, hobbyists, and those in between. So a DSLR is a digital camera that takes in all the information, all the light, motion, and then brings it back to the sensor at the back. And once it hits that sensor, it then turns it into ones and zeros, into recorded digital signal, which is then able to be read and put onto a memory card. And then that memory card you can put in your phone, into your laptop or desktop, and sometimes even onto your phone, and you can view the image. And then when you've got it on your desktop, laptop, or tablet or whatever, you're able then to do what you want with the image. So DSLR, digital single lens reflex, generally a bigger camera. So the trend is now that DSLRs are kind of dying out a little bit, and what's becoming very popular is mirrorless. All right, so then that gets a bit more complicated. So there isn't a reflecting panel, which makes that click click sound. It's mirrorless, so it goes straight onto the sensor, and then you can have a much smaller body without the mechanisms. So a much smaller body, less need of power consumption, so you can have a smaller battery and a whole smaller form factor. It's also a bit quieter. There are some pros and cons. I don't know all the differences, and I'm not a professional photographer. I am just an amateur that has fun with photography. So there we go. I like photography. It's just a hobby for me. I do, on one of my websites, offer some photos. I think it's buymeacoffee.com. There is a shop, and then I have some photos displayed there that you can buy at a discounted rate. So photos, photography, DSLR. Right, so DSLR, as I said, is this professional grade, professional looking camera, normally a bit big and bulky. One of the other main aspects of a DSLR is the lenses. More often than not, you can change the lens, twist it, press the button, twist it, take it off. Okay, yes, actually the lenses can often cost far more than the camera itself. I have some lenses that cost around a few $100s, a few £100. And my camera, my first camera, only cost me £300. And so, because I have a collection of lenses, the glass in the lenses are more valuable than the actual camera itself. But the main thing about photography is the person taking the shot that has all the experience. That is the important person or the important aspect of this. Because a camera on its own does nothing. And a camera in the hands of somebody that doesn't know about cameras is still just a terrible photo. So it's more important that you get educated on photography first. And that brings us to me. So we're just having a little introduction to photography and DSLRs. So you know you've got a DSLR and mirrorless. We've also got smartphones, we've got compact, we've got action cams, we got drones. All these things have cameras on them, and they all use the same kind of format, the same kind of three-way balance, this triangle. All right, you'll hear it talked about a lot. All right, but first of all, the difference between a DSLR, or one of the great benefits of a DSLR, is the screen on the back often can be flipped out, can be articulated around to turn. There's lots of other things I'll come back to now about a DSLR that is much better than the other options. So a compact is really nice to have in your pocket or in your jacket pocket. It's not too big. And then a smartphone is almost always in your pocket. Super convenient. Action cams, you can just clip it now onto your rucksack or your helmet or on the side of your car. You know, they're designed for that. And then you have the drones. A drone is a little bit more expensive, and in most countries you need a license and a registration. So there's another issue. It is normally quite easy, so don't worry. And in the UK it's reasonably cheap. I think it was like cost me £10 for the exam, or £13, and then £10 for the license to put onto your aircraft. You know what I mean, your drone. So what's the main difference between these different photography aspects or different photography styles? So everybody's familiar with a smartphone, but smartphones are getting so good now with all the features and the software abilities to adapt and change everything on your camera, on your phone. But at the end of the day, or at the end of it all, the processor is very, very small in a smartphone because it's still a mobile phone. So the smartphone still has to do all these other functions and last all day, and you know, be in your pocket and be, you know, a utilitarian piece of equipment. So its primary focus is not to be a camera, it's to be a phone and something to access the web and messages and use applications. So the sensor, as I said, is very tiny, kind of like the size of your fingernail, really quite small. And again, also in drones, because it's a small piece of technology, you can put a lot of these little drones now into your pocket, into a big pocket. So the sensor on that, again, is very small. But you've got some really big, famous glass manufacturers getting involved with making the lenses for these cameras super good, super amazing, and very, very high prices for some really good lenses. So like Carl Zeiss or Hasselblad, and many others, many others. So drones are really coming a long way. There's a lot of technology and a lot of glassware and a lot of software being developed to make them really good, especially for video and cinematography. Some really, really amazing stuff happening with drones. Okay, going back then to action cams. Again, action cams are now starting to be real mainstream. They're getting their footage in not just social media and YouTube, but they're finding their way into small films and adverts, and even just the style of action cam may be mimicked on a big camera because they want to give that action feel to their advert or to their part of cinematography. So there's a real place for action cameras, a real place for drone shots, and I don't know, smartphone footage. Sometimes you see that mimicked in films and adverts because they've all got their own recognizable signature. So they're all very good cameras in this day and age for a reasonable price. Amazing amount of quality that you and I probably couldn't tell the difference with the naked eye. The resolution and the pixel quality, just phenomenal. So what else have we got? That's a DSLR, we got flip screens, we've got different size sensors. Okay, so getting into the gubbins of it now, into the internal side of things, right. DSLR, photography in general. So like I said just now, there's three kind of points to this triangle. that is a balance all the time between shutter speed, the aperture, and the sensor sensitivity. All right. It's whenever you adjust one, it affects the others. So the whole premise of a camera is down to allowing whatever amount of light necessary for the conditions to hit the back of the sensor and how sensitive you have your sensor dialed up or dialed down. And there's pros and cons and good reasons and bad reasons for any number of these exposures. Okay, so you might want a really dark exposure to give more of a contrast or to give more of a mood. Often you'll see photos of landscapes or seascapes, very moody, very dark. So that is what some people are looking for. You could also have a very light, very bright photograph, depending on what you need it for. So it's all about subjectiveness, all right? It's whether it's personal to you and how subjective it is. Okay, so this balance of these things. So the first one I said, shutter speed. Shutter speed. That's literally what it sounds. You can dial up the shutter speed super quick, where the lighting isn't going to reach it, and you have to use a strobe light. And I'll get onto that later, a strobe light. But generally, shutter speed is one of the first and easiest ways to adjust the amount of light going into the sensor. So the next one would be aperture. And that's basically like the iris of your eyeball. You know, squinting and closing that iris right down is the same as your aperture, bringing your aperture right down. Well, in camera speak, it's the opposite way. Yeah, all right. So aperture. And then we've got sensitivity, or ISO. ISO, the sensitivity of your sensor in the back, that chip. So obviously in smartphones and smaller compact cameras, the sensor is very small. So your ISO, your real ISO, is limited to the sensor. With a bigger camera, with a really big sensor, you've got a lot more maneuverability. Regards to the light coming back to it and the sensitivity, often cameras will say you've got this much room to be able to adjust the sensor. But actually, if you do go all the way to the peak of your camera's ISO availability, you'll find a lot of noise in it. So it's not normally quite as high as you think, because you don't want noise and distortion and other grainy aspects of your photo. Because when you want to zoom in or do anything with it, it becomes really quite grainy and poor. The quality reduces. There we go. We use that term, reduced quality. Okay, so we got sensitivity, aperture, and shutter speed. All right, so that's the three big main factors that really have a difference on your photography. All right, okay. So what is aperture? Well, I said aperture already is like the iris of your eye squeezing right down, and how that makes a difference. As well as aperture, you can have such a thing as an ND filter, neutral density. So that basically is like putting sunglasses on your camera. And why would you do that? Why would you do that? Well, if you're in a very sunny place or a sunny climate, you put that ND filter on, that sunglasses, then you have more scope for adjusting the other settings. All right, so that gives you more wriggle room to play. You don't have to shut down your shutter and your aperture quite as far, because you've got the sunglasses on, you've got that ND filter on. And many cameras, like one of my last camera, has an ND filter built in, electronic one, you just click the button. And you can buy ND filters for most lenses in most camera shops. They're pretty common and ubiquitous. So that's another aspect, adjusting the light. So the most important thing of the whole camera, the whole important thing, other than yourself, is light. You know, it's almost impossible to take a photograph in the dark. We'll get back onto that in a moment. So aperture, right, what is shutter speed? Shutter speed. Shutter speed is literally how quick the shutter comes over your lens and back again. And generally there's two shutters on a DSLR. They're like curtains. One comes down and the other comes across. Like I said, like curtains on a theatre. Open and close the curtains. All right. So that's shutter speed. And you can crank that down really, really slow. So it happens once every 30 seconds. Maybe once every 1 second. Again, perfect for nighttime photography. We'll get onto that. And then finally, you can crank it right up to have something really fast. So you got the ability to take photos of something and action and make it look still, like it's not moving at all. You can also follow that action, that car, that person, and move with it, hopefully at the right speed, which takes practice. And then you could have motion blur in the rest of your photo, but that item or that person looks perfectly clear and crisp in focus, which is amazing. And then other things, you can have fast action moving and have a little bit of blur on your picture to show action and movement, which is a style some people like. Like I say, everything is subjective. And then also you can crank it up again and you can do other things such as hyperlapse. So you got time lapse, which most people have heard of, where you get like a photo every second or every 5 seconds, and you can see something moving in the background, maybe clouds, maybe a slow boat, to emphasize time moving along. Or you can have hyperlapse, where it's almost like your life or your standing or your subject is standing still and everything else is rushing around, to emphasize time again in a different way. So those are two very famous ways of showing time within cinematography or even just in a photo. Again, very good, very exciting, and lots of fun to play with there. So that is shutter speed. And then finally we have ISO. Don't ask me what it stands for, I can't remember. It's International, I don't know. So ISO, the sensitivity of your sensor at the back of the camera. Most people just put it down on the factory settings at the base number, at the low number. So then you do have opportunity to crank it up if you need to. But most people leave it down below at the bottom settings, 100, 200, something like that. And then just leave it there and adjust everything else around it. Okay, so it's shutter speed, ISO, aperture. All right. Okay, so like I said, light. Light is the key ingredient. The light is what touches the sensor. Light is what exposes everything to the right amount. And so light is a topic all on its own. You wouldn't believe it, but light is fascinating if you're interested in photography. There are many artists out there that spend many hours, maybe years, dedicated to learning about light and the shadows it casts and where it is and the temperature. So you've probably heard of the golden hour in the evening, and there's an hour in the morning where everything is blue and fresh and crisp. So those 2 hours are the most prolific for photographers. And those 2 hours are often tried to mimic through other things like filters and post-production. But we'll get onto that later. So light is super important. Light, shadows, darkness. Photos just dedicated to capturing the light or a person in the light, using light as a point. And then on the flip side of that, also we have this thing called negative space or dark space. So you may have a photo with all the action happening in one little corner of the image, and all the rest of it is black or white, blown out. Another aspect of that would be vignetting, often done in post-production or with filter, and that is often where all around the sides and outside are almost like a circle of your subject is either blackened out or all white. So the person looking at it is focused only on the subject. That's also ideal as a little trick to use when you've got other things in the background you can't get rid of. And to focus people in on that is a real bonus. We'll also get onto Lightroom later, but focusing where the eyes are to go, where you want person's eyes to go, is another aspect of photography you learn about later on. Training the eye and training the viewer's eye. It's a very interesting topic. All right, okay, we need to keep moving on because we don't have a lot of time. Right. Light modifiers, color temperature. It's all subjective and personal, all right? So I have a light on me at the moment and I can make it brighter and I can make it dimmer, depending on how light I want my face. Also now I have a shadow in the background because I don't have a backlight. We'll get onto lighting setups in a moment. But light, we can change the color. We can make it more warm and golden, or we can make it more cool and blue. You can also get gels to put on front of your camera lens to emulate this, or even to have it around in the background to make the background temperature different. So if you're taking a photo and you've got I've forgotten the word now. If you have the flash on the top of your camera to light, you may have another color in the background from a little ambient light. So that would have an orange in the background and then white on your face. So there's often a balance to be made, or for you to think about the color of other lights in your shot. Like I said, the color temperature can make a lot of difference, and that all depends. You can do some of that in post-production, but that all depends on personal preference. Okay, and like I said, modifiers. So with modifiers, is generally a case of making the light soft. Real light from daylight is very soft because it's splayed through the clouds or splayed through the atmosphere in a way that is very gentle and even throughout. But with a fake light, you know, like a light I have here, it is very focused and very sharp. So you can have these things called modifiers, which are supposed to help bend the light and move the light so it's a lot softer and to mimic real daylight. You can get grids inside of it, you can get foil inside of it, you can get reflectors, all different types of modifiers. Really big ones, small ones, and the bigger the light modifier with the grids inside, the more diffused the light is. And if the light is diffused, then it's going to give you a softer lighting on your subject, which is why I keep looking into the camera at the moment to see how warm my face is in regards to the lighting. But yeah, there's a lot to be learned just from lighting setups and lighting modifiers. Okay, let's move on now to black and white. So black and white is a real big focus for many photographers. Either you love it or you just dabble in it a little bit. Some people kind of jump all in because instantly it makes your photos look different to anybody else's. And instantly it makes many photos look better. Again, that is subjective and down to personal opinion. It takes out a lot of the distractions in a photo. So you're focused on the areas that the photographer wants you to see much quicker and easier. And the black and white really can be nice and sharp image and yeah, just different as well. So anything in photography that's different can often stand out. So we'll get on to differences in a moment. What was I saying? Black and whites, clarity, wow factor, focused, silhouettes. So silhouettes often can make a big appearance in photography on purpose. What else we got? We got a wow factor. Yeah, so the black and white thing really makes things pop on an image, depending on what kind of print you have as well, whether you're looking at a screen or whether you're looking at a printed image. Sometimes a printed image, when it's framed, can really jump out because the frame is like saying, screaming, look at this. Now for a photographer, a framing becomes very important, but we'll get back to that in a minute. So you got the frame, then you got the border, and then you got the composition that the photographer is created, and then you got the black and white and the focused, and it's very consuming of you to stare into this photo when it's really well orchestrated. And that's kind of the art of photography, is orchestrating the viewer to where you want them to be, to see what you want them to see, in the way you want them to see, in the mood. So it's really kind of like editing somebody's feeling of that moment, which is kind of bizarre, Okay, so that's black and white. Motion blur. I mentioned that a little bit just now about moving the camera with your subject to get motion blur. So motion blur itself is used quite a lot in cars, car photography and car advertising and things like that, or to put something as quite glowing in the dark, or to give a good shine and give a good feel of energy and excitement and feeling of the night. The other type you've got is night vision. Night vision photography is something completely separate, which I'm not going to mention now. But there is nighttime photography where you can take photos of the stars or even sometimes of landscapes with the moonlighting. Obviously, you have the shutter speed to very, very slow, which helps with that. So that is a whole another aspect altogether. I mentioned briefly slow motion, and then you've got panoramas where you're moving the camera around the hot, like either 360 degrees or just from one side to the other side to give you a 180-degree view to share with your family or to share with an audience. You can take stills and then stitch them together, or some cameras will allow you to slowly move the camera around and then the camera will stitch it all together for a seamlessly beautiful photo. Really wide. Makes for a good piece of art on the wall if you've got a nice wide panorama. And then you kind of get this film screen, you know, like with the black bars at top and bottom, that kind of wide angle view, wide angle image. Also, then we've got 360 cameras. I should have mentioned that earlier, sorry. 360 cameras where you're able to select the image after you've taken the shot in post all the way around you want. So that is amazing as well. You can have the image of a complete spherical sphere image, and that's quite interesting, quite different. As I said, different things are quite interesting in photography. So that's like the Insta360 and other 360 cameras. Really quite interesting. More so for enjoyment of entertainment and social media, really. All right, generally anyway. Okay, then we've got, moving on now, so I said about panoramas, moving on, so we've got manufacturers. So different manufacturers like your Sony, your Nikon, your Leica, Panasonic, Fuji, they all have a cult following of die-hard fans because of their color science or their ecosystem. So that's a big thing to consider when you're buying a camera, is the ecosystem it comes with. And what I mean by that is how easy it is for other parts, or how wide a net they have of ancillary equipment. You know, can you get extra lenses for this that you want? Can you get a lens that does this for that camera? Can you get a lens for that does this camera? There's a lot of other paraphernalia, you know, and batteries and things like that for that ecosystem, that garden. It's kind of like being in an Apple situation, you know, Apple iOS situation where you're all in. Sometimes though, you can buy adapters that will fit lenses onto other cameras. Sometimes some things are interchangeable, maybe like a flash, things like that, that are generic. So that's not too much of a concern. Sometimes you can have but people are quite often die hard and they buy a lot of cameras all by one manufacturer, because they really like the color science, or they really like the feel of it, they really like the menu system, they like the tactile part of it. So that's another interesting part, the tactile and feedback you get from those images. And then when you put them on a big screen, it really engages you on a visceral level with you physically, and then you through the lens looking at this image. So that's a very interesting aspect to why many people like photography. Right, so we said about ecosystems, lenses, lens adapters. Right, okay. Next, flashes. No, sorry, lenses. Oh my goodness, lenses. Wow. Now that's a massive topic all on its own again. Lenses. You can spend thousands and thousands on lenses, and there's lenses for everything, for wildlife, for portraits, for wide angle and estate agents and architecture. There's so many different types of lenses. We'll get on later. There's even fun lenses that you can have that morph images and twist and bend things. Crazy, crazy. Personally, I like prime lenses because they're quicker, they're good quality glass, and just better quality. But occasionally a zoom lens is good. So I've got one I think is 70 to 300, and that gives me a good depth. Because I'll get onto that in a minute. So finding the right lens for you and your camera takes a little bit of time. So it's good you can rent lenses now. You can rent them by the day and by a half day. You can borrow a lens and things like that from camera shops or online shops, things like that. That's really, really broad aspect, you know. So you got a lens for every occasion, everything you can think about. Shallow depth of field, making things morphed. Lots of different things. Right, okay. I could go on and on and on about flat lenses for a long, long time. Okay, but we'll stop there. Just think of the three. Generally, just three is the famous. They call it the Holy Trinity. Holy Trinity. So you have a long angle, a wide angle, and an everyday for portrait. I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there. Okay. Flashes. So flashes are quite important if you're in the shade or you're taking photos of people in the dark, in the shade or in a room where the light is very limited for your camera. Portable lenses obviously are a lot better unless you're in a studio, in which case you have studio lights. And you can have studio strobes, and you can have strobe with you out on location. But obviously a lot of this gear gets heavy, you get more and more equipment, then we're talking about umbrellas and the list goes on and on. It is almost like the heaven for a hobbyist that wants to spend money, because you can spend money till the cows come home. That's why there's a number of camera shops in every city, because people love spending money, especially on camera kit. Camera kit, thousands and thousands and thousands. There we go, right, okay. Flashes, umbrellas, light setups. So there's also a whole load of science about light setting up. So you have your camera in front of you, and then you normally have your light off to a 45-degree angle and slightly above would give you a nice Rembrandt lighting where you have just the corner of the cheek on one side and the rest of this side in light, and then shadow on the other side to add a bit of depth and drama and depth to your photo and make it look a little bit more interesting and a little bit more not 2D and stuck flat to the wall. Hence why I should have a light behind me to get rid of that shadow. Okay, what was I talking about? Flashes, lights, and light setup. Yeah, so that is a common one. And then you've got a whole science of like the halo effect coming from above. And also then you've got like the Hollywood setup where you just have like a butterfly image of under their nose, gets rid of any panda eyes and things like that. And then you have a reflector from underneath. So there's a whole load of science and information about lighting setups. And then you go on again about the grids and the gels and things like that. Okay, moving on quickly now because the time's running on. Then we got tripods. Oh my God, tripod is a lifesaver. So even something like a small GorillaPod that you can adjust to your settings, to your outdoor environment. You know, put it on a rock, put it on a fence post. Something like a GorillaPod tripod is really good. If not, just a little travel tripod, really, really helpful. The photos of you coming towards the camera or away from it, really nice to change it up instead of always looking straight at the camera, really close distance, you know. And changing it from eye level all the time. I often take photos at the bottom, turn my phone upside down because the camera's on the top. So if I turn it upside down, you can get some of the foreground in, and then the main image, and then some of the background. Really makes a big difference. That would be one of my top tips. Turn your mobile phone upside down and clean your lens. Right, keep moving on, keep moving forward. Right, so I said tripods. Monopod, so that's another option as well. You can have a monopod. Not so good if it's good if you're standing still in one place for hours on end and you want to take the weight off. And you can have a monopod with legs at the bottom as well. Lots of different options there. Manfrotto, I think, is the one of the most popular brands there. But also, and similarly, just foot placement. You can move your feet around a little bit to give you a really good change. You know, just a little bit of moving the camera down or up. You know, like I said, low position. But moving your feet, you don't have to stand exactly still and take the photo from where you see. It's much easier to move your camera a little bit to one side or the other to remove the horrible thing you have in the background, whether it's a seagull or an umbrella or a dog taking a poo. Just moving a little bit will really make a big difference and save a lot of time and energy. All right, let's move on to the next part. Subjects. So subjects would be what you're taking a photo of, whether that's a model or a dog or the mountains or a tree or a house. The subjects, models, clothing. So clothing and props, it can really change things up. It's good to have several props and a few changes of clothes, depending on the background. So you might have a model come to you wearing some lovely, really beautiful light colors, and then the background you've got is very, very light. And then you don't want to spend a long time in post having to change the background because what she's wearing or he's wearing doesn't blend very well with the background. Often it's nice to have contrasting colors to your background. So if your model is wearing white or light colors, then preferably a dark background, maybe a wall would be nice and gritty in your photo. Or if he or she is wearing very dark clothing, then maybe sky or some other very light background will really help save a lot of time in post-production. And again, props help give you a lot of diversity in your photo. You may have a perfect idea of what you want the photo to be, but can't quite get it with no props and the person standing, the subject being just as they are. So props go a long way, not just for people, but also for subjects. So like you can have a perspex sheet to act as a window and sprinkle a bit of water on it. Often you'll see photographers just use a puddle to get a good reflection in the puddle, including the puddle can make a really nice dramatic difference, you know, or bokeh, you know, you get the glimmer of light in the background, you know, just tiny little round bits of light. Really interesting, a lot of fun to be played with there. You know, and symmetry with mirrors or buildings. If you get a really reflective building, you could have a model or a dog being right opposite or as they're walking past, right close to it, and you're up against it. You can take a really good symmetry image. Can come out very nice. But that's a lot of things to play with. It takes a lot of practice. Okay. Right, so composition, leading lines, rule of thirds, symmetry, negative space. Well, I've already I've already mentioned negative space and symmetry. You kind of got the idea of that. You understand that a little bit. But leading lines and the rule of thirds. So the rule of thirds, as it sounds, is lines coming down and lines going across, horizontally and vertically. Split your screen up generally, or your image, into equal parts, 3, 6, 9 squares. And they normally say that if you're on one of the axes, you know, top, middle, bottom axis of those crossing lines, then that gives the best image. But all rules are meant to be broken in photography. Sometimes it's really interesting and really different if you're using the lines in a completely different and wacky way. The same goes for leading lines. Leading lines are very, very fun and very good for getting your audience eyes to train to go where you want them to go, whether it's through the valley of a mountain and a landscape, following a stream, or whether it's the lines of 3 or 4 buildings coming together into a V or into one corner, or if it's just light, using the light of the sun cutting through the building or cutting through somewhere and having like a triangle or a point to someone, and then when somebody walks through it just there, or you have your model standing just there, it subconsciously moves your audience's eyes straight to your subject. And it really makes for a good photo. It really does. Okay, composition. So that's really about, like I said earlier, framing your photo, checking what's in the background, what's in the foreground, making sure you're safe. And often, if you can, using something to frame your image. So whether you've got a line here and a lamppost there, or a doorway is perfect, or two different things bookending and then your subject in the middle, that often is a very good composition as well. So something else to think about with regards to your composition. Okay, keep moving on. Styles of photography: landscape, portrait, macro, micro, loads and loads of different styles of photography. I suggest you just get out there and look at the different styles in books, on YouTube, on Google, see what you see in the galleries. Look in the galleries. You can look for free. So why not? So many different aspects, so many different types. It's really, really exciting and interesting if you're a little bit into photography. Okay. Personally, my favorite, I really love street photography. That's one of the reasons why I like a long lens, which is opposite to most street photographers that like to be right in the action. I like to be way, way away from the action and using a nice long lens. So I don't disturb that perfect moment of when two people are engaged and are laughing at each other and smiling. I know it's a bit secretive. I know it's a bit maybe not asking people's permission, but that's another subject we can get onto. But I really enjoy the fact that I'm not disturbing that moment. It's a genuine, perfect moment. Two elderly people smiling over a book, a mother and a child laughing and playing. Even if it's a dog and a seagull together, you know, just that moment that I don't spoil, that I take with my eyes and then sometimes with my lens. It really is for me a magic moment. You know, I really, really appreciate that and like that. And that is my favorite kind of photography. You know? Right, okay, briefly mentioning legally, in the UK, and same with lots of other countries, not all countries, check with your own local authority, but in my country, you're allowed to take a photo providing you're standing in a public place. You can take a photo of anybody, anywhere, all right? But take that with a pinch of salt. I am not a solicitor, I'm not a lawyer. Take that with a pinch of salt, with you know, using your own judgment in mind. So providing you're standing in a public place, then you can take a photo of anybody. I would obviously stay clear of taking photos of children, just because the amount of confrontation you can get. I've taken a photo before of a dog, and there was a child run into frame, and then somebody had a right go at me at taking photos of their child, but that was another story. So, like I say, it's not illegal to take photos if you're in a public place in the UK. Right, my favorite. Okay, so yes, then, like I said about ancillaries, other things you can buy. Like I said, you can buy lighting stands, you can buy tripods, you can buy flashes, thousands and thousands of different things. But just now, Lightroom. So after you've taken your photo and you spent all your money, you take your photo, you put it, say, into Lightroom, is one of the most famous applications to alter your photo. And why? Why would you want to alter your photo? Well, there's a lot of scope to change things. You may have only had one chance to take that perfect shot, and there might be something a little bit wrong. There might be like an exit sign up in the corner of the video. There may have been a fly. There may have been a seagull. Any number of reasons you might want to adjust that photo if it was the only one you could take. Sometimes you got the beautiful photo where everybody's smiling, everybody's eyes are open, they're light, they're in the perfect place, and then there's one little thing that's wrong. And you think, oh. And so often you're able to adjust it in Lightroom. And you can change also the mood of things in Lightroom. If you just watch a few videos on it, you can do so much with Lightroom. It's amazing. It's amazing. I try and keep things as raw and as pure and unchanged as possible, personally. That's my personal preference. But everything is subjective, and that's what makes photography so exciting. It's all subjective to your preference, my preference, somebody else's preference. All right then, so that's Lightroom. There's also apps very similar on your phone where you can change things and mold things in together, merge things, morph things. some exciting fun apps like InShot, especially for videos and for adjusting it, or Snapseed, and many others. So it's far and beyond what you get on, say, Instagram or Snapchat. You can do so much more with it with other apps. All right. So I got to finish it there, but I'll give you some top tips. Number one, have fun, enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, you're not going to keep doing it. So have fun, all right? First and foremost, have fun. Put the camera down sometimes, enjoy the moment, and just look at the world with different eyes, you know, thinking of it with photographer eyes. What makes a good composition? How is that light? You know, lots of different things you can ask yourself. And then only bring the camera up at the last minute. Batteries and memory card. You can never bring enough batteries and memory card because you never know. You might get excited and you find you're out there for more hours than you expected. Or if you're on a trip, you might end up taking more photos than expected. So memory cards and batteries, really good. And like I say, don't forget, it's subjective and your personal view. Okay, if you want to know any more about photography, then mention down in the comments and I'll see what I can do or link you up with somebody that knows much more than I. But for me, it's fun, it's enjoyable, and it's a way I spend my time occasionally when I get time. So if you have any comments, mention it in the if you have any comments. If you have anything to say, if you have anything you want to ask, if there's anything you want to mention in the comments, please do so below and I'll try and answer as many as I can. So that's it for now. The time's ticking on and I gotta go. You have a great day, you stay safe, and remember, enjoy learning English. Have fun with it. Play games. Enjoy English. Have fun. Okay, thanks very much. Take care and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.